It was just supposed to be a late-night run for fries. 16-year-old Jayla Bryant had just finished her study group and was driving her father's silver Honda Civic through the quiet suburban streets of New Haven, Connecticut. She had the windows down, music low, and her GPS guiding her to the nearest fast food drive-thru. Nothing about her drive was unusual until the flashing red and blue lights lit up behind her. She glanced into her rearview mirror, confused. She wasn't speeding. She hadn't missed any stop signs. Her seatbelt was on. She clicked her signal and pulled over calmly, placing both hands on the wheel just like her dad had taught her. 2 squad cars stopped behind her, and within seconds, 3 officers emerged. Their flashlights beamed harshly into her car. One of them barked, "Roll the window down. Now." She complied quickly, her heart pounding. "Is there a problem, officer?" The flashlight waved wildly in her face. "Where's the weapon?" "What weapon?" she asked, visibly panicked. The officer didn't answer. Instead, he reached for the door handle. "Step out of the vehicle." Jayla's voice shook. "I haven't done anything." "Out," one of the cops screamed, jerking her door open. The other 2 rushed in. One yanked her arm roughly, twisting it behind her back. She cried out, shocked and scared, as they pulled her out and threw her on the hood of the car. Her phone dropped to the ground. Her cheek pressed cold against the metal. A neighbor across the street had already started recording. "You fit the description," one officer muttered while the other searched the car. "Female, black, driving a silver vehicle. Possible stolen car." "This is my dad's car," Jayla screamed. "It's registered to Terrence Bryant. Check the glove box." But they weren't listening. At that very moment, Jayla's phone lit up from where it had landed in the street. Dad calling. Back at home, Terrence Bryant was watching the news, sipping coffee. The call rang twice before going to voicemail. He tried again. No answer. That wasn't like her. She always picked up. Instinct kicked in fast. He called again, still nothing. Then he accessed her phone location from the tracker he'd installed after she got her license. She was just 3 blocks away. Still, not moving. His old training came rushing back like muscle memory. Terrence stood up, grabbed his keys, and left the house without saying a word to his wife. Meanwhile, the police had handcuffed Jayla and sat her on the sidewalk. Her cries were ignored. A female officer showed up minutes later to search her while the others dug through the car, looking for anything illegal. All they found were a few school books, a half-eaten pack of gum, and a worn army badge that had fallen between the seats. They tossed it aside. "She's lying," one of the officers said. "No way this is her car." Then headlights pulled up to the scene. A black SUV rolled to a slow stop, and out stepped a man with a shaved head and a stiff posture. Calm, composed. Terrence Bryant. He didn't shout. He didn't rush. He simply walked toward his daughter, his eyes sharp and dangerous. "That's my daughter," he said flatly, his voice calm but ice cold. One officer moved to block him. "Sir, please step back." Terrence stared at his badge. "I'm retired military intelligence. If you touch me, you better pray you filled out your reports right." The moment shifted. One of the cops, the youngest, swallowed hard. Jayla looked up, tears falling down her cheeks. "Daddy." Terrence's gaze didn't move. "Take those cuffs off my daughter." Still, the senior officer resisted. "We had reasonable suspicion. This vehicle." Terrence pulled a card from his wallet. Not his license, his clearance. Black, embossed, with a Department of Defense seal on it. The officer took it. "Read it." Then suddenly paled. "I want badge numbers," Terrence said softly. "Every one of you. Right now." The street had gone silent except for Jayla's muffled crying. But this was just the beginning. Nobody moved for a long moment. The silence was thick, embarrassing, even, but Terrence Bryant wasn't in the mood to let them save face. He took a slow step forward. "My daughter is 16. She's honors student at James Monroe High. She's never had a single disciplinary issue in her life. And tonight, she gets pulled out of a car, slammed onto a hood, and cuffed like a criminal." "For what?" "Driving while black." One of the younger officers fumbled to unlock the cuffs from Jayla's wrists. She was still shaking, arms red where they had twisted them too hard. The female officer who'd searched her looked away, avoiding eye contact. Terrence helped her stand. "It's okay, baby," he whispered, putting an arm around her protectively. "I'm here." The supervising officer finally spoke. "Sir, if you just let us explain." "Explain?" Terrence cut him off. "You pulled a minor out of a car without probable cause, made no effort to verify her identity, and didn't even run the plates properly. That badge you just ignored in the front seat, that's mine. I served 22 years in the U.S. Army, most of it doing things you'll never read about. I've trained federal agents on threat assessment, racial bias, and situational de-escalation. And all of you just failed on every single count." Jayla's breathing slowed as she clung to her father's side. Her fear was slowly turning into something else: rage. The senior officer tried again. There was a be on the lookout for a suspect in a silver vehicle involved in a robbery not far from here. We were following protocol. Terrence stared at him with a look that could cut steel. Protocol doesn't give you the right to treat a young girl like an animal. You don't get to hide behind it when what you did was racial profiling, plain and simple. A few neighbors had gathered now, some in robes and slippers, others holding phones. More were recording. The entire scene was no longer just a traffic stop. It was a public incident, one that would soon be all over the internet. "I want your names," Terrence said again, slowly. "I want your badge numbers. And don't think this ends here. I know exactly how to file the kind of complaint that doesn't get buried in a drawer." The youngest officer tried to speak, but his voice cracked. "We're sorry, sir. We really thought." "You thought," Terrence interrupted, "that because she was a black girl in a decent car, she had to be trouble. That's the problem. You didn't think she might be a student, or a daughter, or just a kid trying to grab a burger after studying. You thought she was a threat." Jayla wiped her tears and stepped forward. "They wouldn't even listen to me," she said, her voice steadier now. "I told them whose car it was. They pushed me, slammed me, called me a liar." A police sergeant finally arrived, stepping out of an unmarked cruiser and walking straight toward them. He was middle-aged, white, and visibly uncomfortable with what he was seeing. "Mr. Bryant," he began, shaking Terrence's hand carefully. "I just got the dispatch. This shouldn't have happened." "You're right," Terrence said. "It shouldn't have, but it did." The sergeant turned toward the other officers, especially the one who had led the stop. "Get back in your vehicles. Now." They moved without question, embarrassed, exposed. As the lights dimmed and the cars rolled away, the sergeant faced Terrence again. "I'm not going to insult you with an apology that won't fix this," he said. "But I'd like to speak with you and your daughter in the morning, at headquarters. Internal Affairs is going to want to hear this from you directly." Terrence nodded once, still stone-faced. "They will." That night, back at home, Jayla sat on the couch wrapped in a blanket while her mom held her tight. She didn't say much, just rested her head on her mom's chest while Terrence stood near the window, phone in hand. He wasn't calling the police. He was calling someone else, someone not listed in any public directory. A friend from a past life, a favor owed, because what happened tonight wasn't just going to disappear into the system. Not this time. Not when it was his daughter. By sunrise, the video had already gone viral. The neighbor's recording of the arrest had been posted to TikTok and then Twitter, then local news caught it. It showed every second, from the flashing lights to Jayla's screams, from the cops dragging her out to her father stepping in like a ghost from the Pentagon shadows. The caption read, "They messed with the wrong black girl. Her dad's a spy." At 9 a.m. sharp, Terrence walked into the New Haven Police Department with Jayla at his side and his wife close behind. He was dressed in full civilian clothes, but something about him made even seasoned officers stand up a little straighter. It wasn't just the way he carried himself. It was the weight of what he knew, what he'd done, things even they wouldn't dare ask about. The Internal Affairs Division was waiting. Clean suits, cold smiles, fake apologies. "Mr. Bryant," said a gray-haired man who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else, "I want to express our department's deepest regrets." "I'm not here for regrets," Terrence interrupted. "I'm here to give my statement. I have documentation of my daughter's injuries, medical reports, witness footage, and the names of the officers involved." Jayla said nothing the entire time. She just sat there, arms folded, watching them all sweat under her father's quiet wrath. For the first time since that night, she wasn't afraid. She was furious. The next few hours were spent filling out statements, handing over evidence, listing names and times and badge numbers. Terrence was careful with every word, precise, like a man filing a mission report behind enemy lines. But that was just step one, because after the meeting, Terrence didn't go home. He drove straight to a small building on the edge of the city. It wasn't marked. Just a black door and a security camera with no visible buzzer. He stood still in front of it, didn't knock, just looked up. The door clicked. Inside was someone who owed him. "Terrence," said a woman in a tight gray suit, her hair in a braid, eyes sharp as glass. "When I heard what happened, I knew you'd come calling." "I need it public," he said. "Not just an investigation. I want names, files, their training records, complaints, internal memos, all of it, and I want it leaked." The woman raised an eyebrow. "You sure about this? You know once it's out there, you can't put it back." "She's my daughter." That was enough. 2 days later, a massive internal leak hit local media. Not just about Jayla's stop, but about the 3 officers involved. Prior complaints, racial bias training failures. One of them had already been sued for excessive force and settled quietly. The police department tried to contain it, but it was too late. National outlets picked it up, see at NHNM at S at NHB HC. Even some conservative stations covered it, though with their own spin, but it didn't matter. The story had taken off. Retired Black Army spy exposes police abuse after daughter assaulted in traffic stop. Petitions went up, public forums were held. 2 of the officers were suspended, 1 quietly resigned. The police chief held a press conference that looked more like a funeral. Terrence never smiled once, but Jayla did, because for the first time, she saw what justice looked like when it had a soldier behind it. One night, sitting on the porch, she looked at her dad and said, "You really were a spy, weren't you?" He sipped his tea. "That's classified." She grinned. "You're scary." "I'm a dad. That's worse." They sat in silence for a while, watching the sky change color. "I don't want to be afraid anymore," she said. "I want to speak up. Do something." "You will," he told her. "You already have." Because sometimes, it takes one mistake, one injustice, to trigger a fire that spreads. And for the officers who thought they were just dealing with another black teen, they'll never forget the day they met her father. The spy they didn't see coming.